overwhelming than what it really is.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the first thing is you just kind of have to look at what you have. So look at what you've got. Look at what you look at the content that you have currently, and then if you don't have any content, then think about hiring a ghostwriter. And what a ghostwriter will basically help you to put together. They'll basically write the book for you. Now, if your budget, because ghostwriters can vary, anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 for a ghostwriter. If your budget isn't there, then just set a plan for yourself. So outline the book, do a little bit of research first, see what else is out there. I recommend highly read the reviews of other similar books in your market and see what is lacking. So people, a lot of times reviewers, if they're writing a thorough review, they'll say, gosh, you know what, I loved this, but I really wish that he or she would have addressed this more. And that may be an area that you want to dig into. So you're feeding a need that isn't already being met in the market. But you can pace yourself with this. It doesn't have to be done overnight. If you can write a chapter a week, I think it's a pretty reasonable goal.
Now, with the reviews, you said do some research. How would someone go about starting to do some research if they're thinking about doing a book? Do they go just Google it, or is there certain places they can look at?
Well, that's a great question. So what I recommend that you do is first start following other people in your market. So people who are, direct competitors, or who are even they may even just write about your topic and not even have a business, because I know a lot of bigger authors do that. But just start to follow those people, and then I recommend getting a news alert system. So you can go to a site called mention.net or TalkWalker, so talking and walking, so talkwalker.com. And both the services are free. I think TalkWalker is actually free forever. Mention, I think after a certain number of leads that you get, they may start charging you, but it's pretty minimal. But what you can do is you plug in the person's name or the book title or even just the keyword, and you'll start to get a sense of what's being said out there, who's saying it, who's writing about it, and start to kind of follow them and see what they're talking about, see what they're writing about, see what people that are following them, what they are, what they're posting about, about these particular people. That'll help to give you some, do a little bit of background, and then, reach out to them, because I'll tell you something, you'll never find a more supportive group than authors supporting authors. So, reach out to them and review their books. I review everybody in publishing. I mean, I think it's, many of the folks, they write wonderful books, and sometimes I think, oh, I wish I would have written that. So just get out there and start networking with them, and you're before you know it, you've got all these ideas for a book, and you're down, and the book is done, and you can get published very quickly now too.
Now, if you do a self-publishing, what's involved? I know there's quite a few different companies, and including yourself. So, what is the process of getting self-published?
Well, so for self-publishing, the first thing is you need to figure out, so understanding the term self-publishing, right? Self-publishing is you are either becoming a publisher, which means that you get a business license, you become a publishing house, or you utilize a company that will help you produce the book. And they're called publishers. It's actually not a good term. They're book producers. And these are companies like CreateSpace or like Wheatmark and Lulu.com. These are all companies that they're called publishers. They're book producers. What they'll do is they will put together a cover for you. They'll design the book interior. They'll give you the barcode for the book. They'll list it in Ingram and Barnes & Noble and all sorts of things. And so they help to facilitate that process. My personal preference is let somebody help you facilitate that process, because you have better, unless you really want to become a publisher, which I got to tell you, I would never want to do that, just because there's a lot of, it's just a lot of paperwork and all this other, and I admire people who do that. But I just let somebody else produce it, and they'll keep a small portion of what I make. That's fine for the trouble of, stocking and shipping the book, I'm more than willing to pay it. but just understand, and the people used to call it self-publishing. There used to be vanity presses, and vanity presses basically, for $20,000, you could see your book in print. And this was, there's no need to pay that kind of money unless within that $20,000 is somebody that's going to write your book and maybe market your book. And, do you need somebody to help guide you through the process of going from start to finish? You might. In which case, find a coach or somebody who is willing to give you advice and say, yes, do this, do that, don't do this, and so you don't feel quite so isolated. Because sometimes it can feel a little bit isolating when you're out there, publishing your book.
Yeah, a lot of things when you do business yourself is isolating sometimes, especially when you get in the middle. You're always excited in the beginning, and then you start the process. Then you kind of get real, reality hits real fast.
Yeah, that's really true. And I'll tell you something, from my perspective, I don't know, in the 13 years that I've been in business, I've never run a single ad ever for my company. I published, we have a blog. I'm lucky enough to get, requests for interviews like on shows like this and, and others. But the book has helped in ways, it's paid for itself 10,000 times over. But the effort it takes is absolutely worth it because, people come to us organically, if I can use that term.
Now, I have read where someone had recommended, books are a great way to help you sell you. Don't think of you selling the book as much as the book selling you. What do you think about that statement?
Well, I think that I think that's very true. I understand where you're sort of coming with that. I'm struggling with it only a little bit because I do think that you do need to sell the book to some extent. Books don't generally sell themselves. I wish that happened. Of course, then I'd be out of business. But so it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? But I think the book does. If the book is done very well, the book will sell you. If you do your job, then you will also sell the book. Now, keep in mind that if you're a business owner, you think, oh, God, now she's telling me I have to write the book, now I have to sell the book. Well, you probably have a mailing list. You may have other industry partners that you work with. You could just reach out to those people and say, hey, I'd really love to do, could we maybe trade blog posts? Would you consider doing an endorsement or doing a review or something? So there's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit without you having to roll out an entire marketing budget. If you have the money to spend a little bit on marketing the book, I think it could be, if done correctly, it could definitely be a good experience. And I think that it's important for authors to understand that, the format that they want to have the book in, which also kind of ties into how are you going to market it. So are you going to do ebook? Are you going to do paperback? Are you going to do both? So there are a lot of choices to be made that will also kind of fold into that marketing. And I know I've gotten away from your question just a little bit, so I apologize.
No, that's basically, the truth of the matter is we want to pick your brains as much as we can before we have to let you go.
Well, I am more than happy to help because I love sharing information.
Now, you was actually your company was one of the first that actually used the social media and the internet as far as book marketing. And I know that the virtual author tour, what is that?
Well, thank you for mentioning that. So the virtual author tour is where we actually tour, quote unquote, tour books and authors online. And essentially what that means is that we are pitching them to bloggers, we're pitching them to news sites, we're pitching them to, we're pitching them for review or interview, excerpt, feature, Q&A, anything like that. And basically it's about going out after blogs that are unique to their market. So not just spray and pray, right, where you spray a whole bunch of stuff up against the wall and hope that some of it sticks. But I'll tell you, so 10 years ago, I'm looking around at this industry. And at that time, 10 years ago, there were 400 books published every day in this country. Now that number is up to 3,500. And I said, we have a problem. the good news is anybody can get published. The bad news is anybody can get published. So I realized that we were going to be dealing with shrinking bookstore shelf space and potentially also shrinking bookstores, overloaded book reviewers. And that's when we started. I mean, you got to figure, this is so sad, right? We were online before Facebook. I feel so old. But
we won't tell anybody.
Yeah, but it's true. It's a this was pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter, pre all of this stuff that now is, everybody's jumping online. But yeah, so that's basically what the tour is. And the tours vary from author to author. So, if you had a book, yours would look different than, Amy's. And because you want to, whether we're promoting or whether you're doing it yourself, you really want to go after your niche. I mean, I know that, when Oprah still had a show, before she now has a network, but when Oprah still had a show, I'd get so many people tell me, I just want to be on Oprah. And I okay, she doesn't really do books on underwater basket weaving, but, maybe I can ask somebody. I mean, so it's sort of like, so while it's great to have dreams, look if HBO came to me and said, Penny, we find you fascinating, which I find that hard to believe. But
hey, Penny, I find you fascinating.
We want to do a TV show about your life. I'd be all on board with that, but I'm not, I don't spend my days wondering why HBO hasn't called, right? So I think it's great to have, dreams, but I also think it's better to be realistic. So going after, if you're in business, do you want to be an Entrepreneur Magazine or Fast Company? I think that's completely realistic because those are your markets. Those are your people. If you've written about dieting or beauty or something like that, do you want to be an O Magazine or Red Book or Good Housekeeping? Those are perfectly attainable goals because that's your market, right? So have a good goal, have a solid goal, and go after it. And so that's when we're doing these tours, that's what we're looking at. So even just as an example, we had an author last week contacted us. He goes, I wrote a book about Civil War. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there are Civil War blogs that would just make your head spin. And they have so many people and they're active and people just buy up all these books. And you've never heard of these blogs. And pitching him there makes a whole lot more sense than pitching him to some big highbrow blog that maybe gets a lot of traffic that he'll never get featured on because it's not their right market. Am I making sense?
You're making a lot of sense.
So that's kind of, it's less is more when it comes to marketing. You're much better off doing an extremely focused effort than doing a big, broad, let me just pitch everybody on the planet kind of thing. Because that's an expensive, let's pitch everybody on the planet. It's kind of an expensive marketing endeavor, I would think.
And everyone is not your client. I mean, the truth is, no matter how wonderful your product or service is, everyone just doesn't care. I always use the example of I might have the best hot dogs, but if I'm trying to pitch it to vegetarians, I'm going home with a whole lot of hot dogs.
That's a fabulous example. That is a fabulous example. Yes, that is absolutely true. You've got to pitch, you've got to go after the right people and don't get, part of what happens in this industry is people get swayed by, we're going to put you on national television and we're going to do this and that. And, there's nothing wrong with national television and there's nothing wrong with pitching it if it's the right market. If you don't necessarily want to pitch the Today Show if you don't, if it's not, because it's a wasted effort. And they're also going to think, well, that author really doesn't know, A, what they're doing and nothing about our show because they know that we don't do any topics on underwater basket weaving. You can tell I have an obsession with that topic, right?
I take it that you got a recent call about that.
It's funny. It's an example that I've used for years. And one time I was doing a class up in the Pacific Northwest, and some guy stands up and he goes, you shouldn't make fun of that. There's a class at Seattle something about underwater basket weaving. I was like, God, really? Do a lot of people attend?
You're thinking, I'm kind of picking a topic that I can't offend anybody, but you're going to find that one person that's their favorite activity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love underwater basket. I was like, oh, well, more power to you. All right.
So basically, with the virtual author tour, how would I? So let's say I have a book, I will actually contact you to be part of that. Like, how would somebody even get connected to you to be part of the virtual author tour?